I almost dropped it. Aloha, welcome back to the channel. My name is Lee Scott. I'm a professional photographer based here on the Garden Island of Kauai. If you're ever on the Garden Island, stop by the gallery. It's in Hanapepe. Love to see you. Today I want to give a brief video on this bad boy right here, the Canon R1. This is brand new to me. It arrived yesterday. I have not used it at all. I don't even have a lens for it. So this is not a review. All this is reasons why I chose the R1. I recently returned from 6 weeks of photographing wildlife in Alaska and Hokkaido. You can see that video here. And in that video, I give you a review of the Leica SL3 in terms of wildlife scenarios, wildlife photography. After I came back from the trip, I felt that I made a mistake and that I needed to find a way to correct that mistake as soon as possible. With an empty lens cabinet, empty dry cabinet, not a single camera ready for wildlife photography, I had a lot to choose from. I wasn't invested in any particular camera system other than the Leica, which again, I felt like that was a mistake for wildlife photography, so I'm trying to correct that mistake. I considered Sony briefly, but for whatever reason, Sony just doesn't appeal to me. I'm sure they make wonderful cameras. In fact, I know they make wonderful cameras, but just not for me. The real contenders were the Nikon Z9 and a Canon R5 Mark II or the Canon R1. The Nikon Z9 was appealing to me less so for the camera body, but more for one particular lens that Nikon makes, and that's the 400 f2.8 with the 1.4 teleconverter built in. That was very, very appealing to me. However, ultimately I chose the newer technology of the R1. Number one reason I chose the R1, autofocus. Speed, accuracy, rapidity, and its ability to track through obstructions. The autofocus of this camera is reported to be insanely good. The tracking of this camera is said to be otherworldly, and its ability to focus through obstructions. The second reason I chose the R1 is the ergonomics. I have always loved the 1 series bodies. The 1DX Mark II that I shot with was fantastic. The R3 was actually the best feeling camera in hand of any camera that I've ever used to date. The R1 is a little heavier, and it seems a little smaller as well. Not quite sure how well I like it. I would have preferred it to be more similar to the R3. This feels a little compressed. It feels a little tight in the hand here, and it is certainly heavier. The buttons are a little further away, I think, but we'll see how that feels. So the ergonomics was one reason I chose it. We're gonna see if that ends up being, if it holds true after use. The third reason I chose the R1 is the build quality and weather sealing, the robustness of this camera. It's a Toyota, and you know, Toyotas are known for their reliability, their dependability, oftentimes nothing fancy. So this is the FJ Cruiser of the camera world, or the Land Cruiser. So that's what I've done. Almost dropped it. So the Land Cruiser of the camera world, that's the Canon R1. Nothing fancy other than the autofocus, the customization of the menus, which I'm going to appreciate, but the reliability, dependability, and build quality of this. The other reason I chose the R1 is for the EVF. This huge EVF. I can't wait to put my face into this thing. And lastly, the megapixels. 24 megapixels. And actually, this is the reason why I chose the R1. I should probably say that I bought it not because of the 24 megapixels, but that I didn't not buy it because of the 24 megapixels. And let me explain. Well, it's getting hot. I'm going to turn on the air conditioner. 24 megapixels. That's not a lot by today's standards, many people say. I kind of agree. However, not a lot and not enough are two different things. In my mind, 24 megapixels is enough, and here's why. In the past, I used the 1DX Mark II, and some of my absolute best wildlife photographs have come with that camera, which is 20 megapixels. And in the 1DX days, we talked about fewer megapixels, better megapixels. And I think that applies even today to the R1. And I'll explain further. Some of the photographs that I hold most dear to my heart were taken with a 20 megapixel camera. And I've printed those, and I'll share a few with you today. Let's take a look and see what we have. The first photo is this photo of a lynx. I took this in the Yukon Territory at Kluane National Park. And this is a 20 by 30 metal print hanging in the gallery. And I took this with the 1DX Mark II and cropped it. The lens that I used was 300 f2.8 with 1.4 extender. So I was only shooting at 420 millimeter. And we have a beautiful 20 by 30 inch metal print in the gallery. And a photo taken with the 20 megapixel Canon R1 is this beautiful leopard from Ruaha National Park. And this 24 megapixel image is printed in a 24 by 36 inch. This 20 by 30 taken with 1DX Mark II, and one more image, 20 inch by 30 of this little bear cub standing next to his mama in Alaska, 20 by 30, heavily cropped. Again, taken with the 1DX Mark II. We'll go and look at a landscape that I've taken with the 1DX Mark II in the Yukon Territory, Canada. This is a 20 inch by 60 inch metal print in the hallway of the gallery. Two images combined. We'll show you on the screen. But a 20 inch by 60 inch with a 20 megapixel camera. It can be done, okay? One more, another landscape shot. This was taken with the 1DX Mark II. Again, 20 megapixel camera. This particular print is 16 by 24. I've printed it as large as 30 by 45. No issues whatsoever. I've never had a client say to me, I want a bigger photograph of that lion or a bigger photograph of that bear. They've never asked for a size that the image file that the camera produced couldn't do. So I'm banking on 24 megapixels being enough. And then I'm gonna wait for the lens to arrive. As I said, I don't even have a lens for this, but it's coming today. What do you think that lens is? And what would you recommend? And of course, if you could choose any camera for wildlife, what would you choose? Perhaps the Sony A1 Mark II that was announced today, the R1, the Z9, or something else. Let me know in the comments below, and I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you take anything away from it, take away megapixels are important, but they're not the be-all, end-all of the camera. Fewer megapixels may indeed be better megapixels. We'll just throw that out there and see what you think. Okay, I look forward to your comments, and have a wonderful week. Aloha.